hours is buzzing by, and you are locked onto the Sportsline Podcast here on CHCH. Certainly appreciate you checking us out. I'm Bubba O'Neil. As our regulars know this to be true, the Golden Horseshoe, gold for high-level athletes, coaches, executives, broadcasters, and today we're fortunate to have a member of a family that's maybe the most talented in the country. When it comes to the Nurse clan, it all began with this baller who was a three-time finalist MVP for Hamilton Transway, winning multiple provincial titles. In addition, how about an unbeaten season and an OFSA championship at St. Thomas More? Next up, Tamika Nurse earns a scholarship to the NCAA playing at the University of Oregon and Bowling Green State. Fast forward to 2023 and 24, and it's a sister act on TSN as Tamika and Kia are breaking it down on the NCAA men and women's tournament along with the Raptors. Well, it has been a long, long time to be reunited with you, Tamika. So happy to have you here on the Sportsline Podcast. And really, I was trying to think about when the last time I saw you, and I remember those high school days, and I remember an OFSA championship at Cathedral where you were going wild. I mean, you were dominating the tournament, right? And good things were happening to you, and you're going on to the NCAA. As we talked about the Transway stuff, that is all so, like well known in this area. But you know what? Before we go anywhere with your career and stuff like that, I know everyone kind of knows the story a little bit, but I want to hear it from your perspective. Oh, no. The family, your family is really something else. Starts with your dad, who I know very well. Great man, great mom. But what about the rest of you? The three of you have all gone on to do some wonderful things.
I really appreciate it. Growing up in Hamilton, it's this grit and grind place, and that's all we were taught when we were young. Mm-hmm. My dad likes to take claim for all of our success, but really, I believe it was my mother, and we tell my dad that all the time. She played at Mac, so she was like the one. But we've seen a lot of success at the next level, especially my brother and sister. They're just really hardworking kids who came from an environment like Hamilton where you had to work hard to be successful. And I think that's kind of propelled them into the success you see that they have right now at this next level.
I find it interesting that each one of them, and Darnell and Kia, point to you as the one, the bricklayer that started it all. And I guess in some ways, I mean, you're the oldest in that sense, but you wouldn't know it. But
no, thank you.
Thank you. But really, you really did lay down some tracks.
It's really humbling to hear them both kind of say that. I don't feel that way all the time. I feel like my dad reminds me that everything he screwed up with me, he fixed with them. So I feel like I was a trailblazer or a project, maybe. I was a test. But I do appreciate that from both of them. I think I was older than them, so being able to kind of see what it looked like to play sports at a high level gave them something, I think, to try to achieve and beat. I think that is the mantra that my dad and my mom always kind of instilled, see greatness and then try to be better.
Well, you talk about playing at that next level, and again, there was a level of playing at the high school stuff and the club ball here in Hamilton, and a lot of people knew you. I mean, you were, not to blow you were in the paper a lot. You were on CHCH a lot as someone that was doing extremely well and doing some incredible things. But then you go to the United States. I mean, especially at that time, getting that scholarship and going somewhere else, how big of a deal that was. Talk to me about what it was like to play NCAA, big ball, not some small college. You were playing there and doing well.
Thanks. I felt like at the time I was doing all of the things that I needed to do. I was playing for Transway, which was such a high-level AAU program at that time. I was playing at St. Thomas More, where we were playing with the best competition in the entire province at the high school level. I got to play on national teams and play in the Center of Performance, which was a new thing for Canada basketball too, them developing the grassroots program at my age level. So I felt like at the time I was doing the right things. And when I got a scholarship to the University of Oregon, I did feel really proud because I think at the time the U.S. didn't necessarily come down here and look at us the same way as they do then. We were going to a lot of feeder schools, I would say, more like the Canisius, the Buffalo, close to the border.
Right.
So to be able to go to Oregon, Stephanie Skirba, who was in my class, she also went to Michigan that year. We had another girl a year later go to Michigan State. When you start going to these bigger schools, I did feel like exposure became easier, I think, after our class.
Whether it was Oregon or Bowling Green, can you explain to all of us what that's like. I mean, okay, you're playing at high school gyms as age, right? And you're playing, and there's family and friends and some, for high school buddies, and they're all cheering you on. There's 100 people. OFSA gets a little bigger. There's 1,000 people. We're playing in front of a packed gym, right? Here at Cathedral. But then you go to these big stadiums and there's 15, 16. What's that like? Is there a pressure there that you just can't describe?
It's a whole different atmosphere. It's funny because when we were in high school, we packed gyms. Like, we thought we were cool and we were packing Cathedral. And then you go to an Oregon who at the time had a very high female attendance record. So now you're playing in front of like tens of thousands of people. The pressure is different. You are a student athlete, but you are an athlete. At the same time, there is absolutely nothing like being a student athlete in the United States of America on a scholarship. The perks, the access to better education, the access to alumni that have the ability to show you what a future can look like outside of sports, that environment that you can step into, it opens doors for the rest of your life. I really do believe that I wouldn't be sitting where I am today. Neither would my brother, my brother didn't go. Neither would my sister if we didn't take those scholarships to the United States.
The interesting thing was when you look at your career, and I thought you had some successful careers. You played 3 at Oregon, and then you the final one at Bowling Green, and you got to the tournament in that last year.
I did, yeah.
Okay, which must have been an unbelievable feeling.
Yeah.
But then you wrapped it up. And I thought, which was interesting to me, because I could think of, when I think of your era, I think of like a Tammy Sutton-Brown. I think of even a Shona Thorburn here in Hamilton. And, Shona got drafted into the WNBA. Why didn't you choose that route?
I think for me, I always looked at it as a means to an end. The pay for a female basketball player at the time did not line up with the amount of work that I felt like you needed to put in to be very successful at that level. I watched my aunt play basketball. She was really like my role model. So my Aunt Roxy went to Syracuse. I watched her graduate. I watched her have a very successful career at the University of Villanova. I know she worked at the NCAA for a while. And then she kind of, went and had her family. But I always thought to myself, like, if I can play basketball really well, I can go to the United States of America. I can have a scholarship. I can have a crazy NCAA experience. I want to play in a tournament. That was always my thing. And then I will come out of school debt-free. And for me, that would be a win, because it would give me the ability for the next couple of years when I come out of school to kind of figure out what I wanted to do and not feel that pressure of paying a student loan or feeling like I had to go take any job just to make sure I could pay these bills back. So I got really fortunate in that sense. I think for me, what I set out to accomplish, I did, and I was okay with that. I also feel like I did not see necessarily the representation to think of anything else. You're right, there's Tammy Sutton-Brown. Tammy Sutton-Brown's a little bit ahead of me. The one I remember is Stacey Dales.
Okay, Stacey Dales.
Yeah, and even that career was a little bit shorter than what you see now. And the thought of having to play the WNBA and then go play overseas for the rest of the year, and that kind of transient lifestyle, like for me, it just, at the time, it wasn't something I really wanted to do. Yeah,
for some that'd be almost like hanging on.
Yeah, like and then it was always like, okay, so if I play until I'm 30 years old, then what? What am I doing next? I'm gonna enter a workforce at 30, having no previous experience except playing basketball in a foreign country, where those connections don't necessarily line up as if you're here and you're Kia and you get to play in the WNBA and you get to stay and work for TSN. Like all of a sudden, it all makes sense, you know?
Would you ever, like, so it's funny because when some people walk away from the sport, they walk away clean. Don't watch, don't pick up a basketball, it's over. And then some still kind of do. And were you one of those people that maybe would turn on the TV and see the WNBA? And I know we see more games now than we ever did back then at that time. And say, I could lick that girl. You know what I mean? Like, was there ever those feelings?
There are moments I'm like, I could do this. I think if I just went and trained for 12 months and I did it right, could I come back? I never felt bad. Like, I've never felt like really out of shape. I've never felt like I've like lost that much of a step. I'm sure I have, but I don't feel that way. I also am a little bit like my brother and sister, where I feel like if I set my mind to something and I train hard enough, I can always get it done. My only regret in leaving, I really, like, it doesn't bother me at all that I don't play basketball anymore. It really doesn't faze me. Is that my sister came up so fast that had I held on, I probably could have played in the Olympics with my sister. That is the only one.
Yeah, there's no doubt you would have been on that Canada team. And boy, that would have been, what a story that would have been.
They would like to take me now based on nepotism. I'm willing to at least train for 6 months for you, but I could sit on the bench and like give towels and water. If you
we think we talk about what may happen at the Olympics right now, and I know we continue to talk about this with Murray and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander maybe being the best backcourt in Canada. Yeah. Maybe the two Nurse sisters.
I don't think she'd pass to me anymore, honestly. Really don't.
You can take it to the hole, and she can take the three. That's what I always remember of your two playing careers.
Yeah.
You talk about now continuance of things that you're leading. You still got a bite on basketball right now, and I'll tell you this. I'm going to be straight up.
Okay.
I loved it. I loved seeing you and your sister on TSN breaking it down, not just for women's basketball, but for the men and the Raptors too. Explain to me what that experience is like.
It's really cool to get to work with your sister, right? Like, again, we're like pretty far apart in age, so I haven't got to do a lot of things with Kia in terms of like professionally or like in basketball. So being able to kind of sit down with her and talk about a sport we both love, that we both have very differing opinions on a lot of things in terms of sports and like what we would do like strategy wise and skill wise, because we were both very different players. So being able to look at the game in different ways and to kind of talk with my sister about that now as she's a professional female basketball player, it's really cool. And then TSN just being forward enough to be like, hey, we're going to do NCAA women's basketball as a controlled show, and we're going to put it on TV and people are going to watch it. For me, that was just a really exciting moment, because when have we ever had full coverage of the NCAA women's tournament before this? And there's such exciting players and exciting stories to be told and seen that I'm just really proud that I get to be part of that coverage.
You're pretty solid right now, just on TV right now, just doing this right now. But was it like that for those first couple of broadcasts on TSN?
I think you're like nervous-ish. More so, it was like, I have not watched all 64 teams that are playing in this tournament the first year I did it, okay? So the first day I was there, I was like, this team from this conference that beat who? Like, can we talk about UConn? I got them.
You got them down.
I got them. Like, you know what I mean? So that first day was a little bit more like that. You're talking about basketball. At the end of the day, like, it's something I've watched, I've played, and I love. So when someone asks me to watch a game and talk about it, I can do that all day long.
You may not be on the court, but I don't know. Somehow I could see you in an organization. We have this beautiful announcement that just happened a couple of weeks ago. The the WNBA coming to Toronto. And this is something I always thought was going to happen one day. I will say this, I didn't think it was going to happen so quickly.
It's quick.
How does that feel for you to see that? Again, women's professional basketball here in our area in Southern Ontario.
It's an like exciting moment for women's sports. It's a very exciting moment for our country. I think it is a reflection of how much energy we have put into women's basketball in this country, especially as of late. We are very good. We have very good players in this country. We are taking more investment at the grassroots level, which is why you're seeing more female WNBA players come from Canada. We are getting better on an international stage. I think we're getting really close to medaling. Let's hope, knock on something, that we can grab a medal in this Olympics. I think you've seen the best talent that we've ever had come out of Canada. So I do feel like them bringing a WNBA team here now is almost like a respect thing. Like, you deserve it now. Like, we've seen what you've done, and now we want to reward that. And all the people that went into doing this, bringing these exhibition games to Canada, all the people that work at the ESPNW summits, all the people that work in NBA Canada, all the females that have advocated for this, all the men that have advocated for this, because that's a big move.
Big stars
too.
in the NBA.
Yeah, that's a big move too, right? So Tannenbaum, for really like just saying, I want this, and I'm going to figure out by any means necessary that I get this done for the females in this country. I think it's an exciting time to be a female basketball player, viewer, supporter. I think it's a really exciting time to be it in this country.
Maybe you're a general manager one day. I don't know. I can see you being involved somehow, some way, or maybe even doing the TV thing. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity. And I think opportunity, that's the key thing there, because I look at what's happened in hockey, right? Now, before the PWHL, there were several different incarnations of professional hockey, and I think if someone, like Sarah, right? Like Sarah Nurse, who not getting paid. Like, it just, you almost have to wonder, kind of like what you said there, is this even worth it?
Yeah.
Right? And then it finally hooked up. They finally got the right sponsorship and the right deals, TV and all this kind of thing. And all those other incarnations, maybe 2,000 people in the, but the WNBA comes in there and it's 2 appearances here. The place is packed.
Yeah.
So I think that is proof in the pudding that, well, women's basketball is ready for Canada.
I think people always look at Canada as a hockey country, but we really do like basketball.
It's changing.
Like Vince Carter, that Vince Carter effect on basketball was a real thing.
So you believe in the Vince Carter effect?
I do. Yeah. I also believe in the Tamika Nurse effect, though. Like, don't get me wrong there. I think when we played those Pan Am games in Toronto, and we played at home for the first time, I think, ever, and they beat the U.S. for the first time ever, and she was this young kid who stepped onto the court and just went off, and they played that game back on national television the next day. I think it was the first time that, as a nation, we got to see the product that we had, and we got to go behind something that we probably just didn't have access to for a long time. Access is a really big thing when it comes to any sport and visibility. So being able to see that is real, and I think she stepped into that moment at that time, and I think then having like Connecticut championships and being a WNBA All-Star and that type of thing kind of propelled this motion behind women's sports.
Well, let's get your perspective here, and I think this is fun now because you are an analyst now. Yeah. Can you talk to me about Kia's game? As you said, it was very different for you, and I'll be honest, I've said this 1,000 times, and I remember full disclosure.
Sure.
When we did that, a lot of coverage of you and what you're doing at St. Thomas More and winning the offices, I had pitched an idea to do a feature on you when I was at Sportsnet.
Oh, thanks.
To pitch, but you know, at the time, we just weren't acceptance. I mean, the higher ups of basketball as much. Yeah. And I thought this was a great story. Yeah. And I knew that, you know what, hey, your brother's playing hockey at the Sioux. He might get drafted. Yeah. You know, I thought it was, but they just weren't ready for it, unfortunately, right? But then Kia comes in at a time where it was maybe the mindset for many others, especially at the level, at those national sports networks, was different. And she's playing at UConn, Gino Auriemma, like all the #1 draft picks they've had. Talk to me about her career and when you watch her as a baller, especially at that time when she was at that level, what it was like for you.
I always feel like, and I've told Kia, I feel like she is the perfect example of where opportunity meets preparation. Kia's always worked really hard. She's a perfectionist. She'll be harder on herself than anyone can ever be on her. So she's always ready. I think that day at Mattamy, I think that Pan Am Games, I think she was young, so people didn't expect it from her. You have this older team with some vets and some players who have played at the international level for a long time, some people who had played in the WNBA. And you have this young kid at the time who was just like on a Connecticut roster down in the States. You don't see her play that often anymore. And she steps into the spotlight and she does exactly what she's done her whole life and go off. But all of a sudden everyone's like, huh, who's this? You know? And then you actually want to follow her because Connecticut basketball has always been big. It's probably been the only women's sports we would actually get to see on television previous. Every now and then you get a Connecticut game, like you turn on, oh, there's Connecticut. You get a NCAA tournament, you'd see Connecticut. I remember when she told me she was going to Connecticut, I said, Kia, are you going to play? Like, that? Are you sure? Yeah,
because a lot of people go get buried, right?
Like, do you really want to do this? And she was like, well, if I don't, you know, you can always transfer. But she went. I think she started her 3rd or 4th game as a freshman, and she never looked back. She played for Gino. And they're a good program. They teach you how to be a pro, right? So when you come out and you come into the WNBA, you're a finished product, media-wise, skill-wise, being able to handle pressure. It's never going to be harder, I feel like, than playing at Connecticut, because at the time, that was probably the biggest women's program in women's basketball, like in the world.
Absolutely.
So you come from this big media monster, then go play in the WNBA, where you actually probably have less pressure, but you're a pro. Okay, so it's easier to produce at that level. Now you have way more attention, and you have these girls coming out of university who have followings and bring eyes to the sport, and everything's way heightened when you get to the WNBA, which is great for them. You just see like viewership for the Sparks game was like 19,000 people when they played Caitlin Clark. So it's great, but I just feel like Kia has taken this pathway in a way that no other Canadian female probably has. I say it all the time, I'll always be biased. She will always be the greatest women's basketball player in Canadian history, in my opinion. But I don't think you can really deny how impactful she has been on this sport for us in this country.
Well, when you see kids, right? Well, I see this, and I saw this of Mattamy especially, like, I want to be like Kia, little kids being like that. And then, like, seeing her spend time, and I know the Yukon tournament that, you know, they come to Mattamy and play even since she's went on and graduated and now playing in the WNBA, and she shows up for that. And seeing her and the kids like that, that's a relationship and a building relationship that I don't even know if she realizes how big that is.
No, she's so young still, right? Like, she's not young, but she's so young in her career. Her pathway to, I think, what she wants to achieve ultimately is still so far away. You look at like an Aaliyah Edwards, like, she is phenomenal. She brought Connecticut back. There will be more that will come after her that will be good or better. And that is the point. You never really want to be the one that ends up as the greatest. You want to inspire the next set of generational kids to do more, to be better. That's why my siblings are better than me, I hope, right? But that's the idea. So I think her mission is the same. Get girls to pick up a ball and play. Females are way more likely to be CEOs, CFOs, and high-powered females in society if they play just high school level sports. It's not even that you have to play at a professional level. The things that sport teach you, like discipline, time management, the ability to work as a unit, the ability to win, the ability to lose. The ability to respect authority, all of those things that you learn from just being in a sport are all of the things that make us successful long-term outside of it.
Wrapping up your sister, there was a Sunday night a little while ago that I was just happened to be watching TV. And it was an award show. And it was awesome. And seeing you up on stage at this award show, and this moment here, like, this was beautiful. And you got to present to her.
I did.
What was that like?
It was really cool. It's not often that you get to celebrate her. She's not here that often. She's really busy. And honestly, I think sometimes she doesn't even know how good she is and how important she is and how much impact she has in this country on young girls and on
just
females
let
playing.
the people know what that award show was.
Black Excellence, actually.
Beautiful.
Yeah. It was really exciting. She asked me if I would present to her. She's like, I didn't think you'd want to. I was like, well, obviously. Like, what? Who's going to do it? Some stranger? Like, so it was really cool. She doesn't give herself enough credit most of the time. So I like it when we get to celebrate her.
Can I use some of your analyst skills right now?
Okay.
All right, let's go.
No.
Like this. It's coming. You knew that you had to know. I couldn't have you on this podcast and not bring up this topic because it is so. I've never seen anything like it. Okay, Caitlin Clark is a story.
Her?
Yeah,
Are you sure? We don't talk about her ever. What do you mean?
It's a story, right? No doubt about it. She's a story in the NCAA, right? But what's going on in the WNBA? Like, please, the world is yours. Go ahead.
I like Caitlin Clark. I think she's very good for the sport of women's basketball. I think she's good for the business of women's basketball. Caitlin Clark brought a whole new generation of people to watch. I do think that there were very talented players in the WNBA who were already there, who probably didn't get the recognition that they deserved prior to Caitlin Clark's entrance. Okay. Now, there is a large draft class this year that all have a high following. Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, Cardoso, and Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is the most famous out of all of them. I don't know why there is a debate about that. She's the most famous. She probably was the most talented in this draft class, okay? I think there should be a respect level for what she's bringing to the game. I think
from the players, the other players?
From everyone and other players, okay? I think that the scouting report on Caitlin Clark was to body her and chase her off screens and to play her physical in the NCAA. I think that scouting report has stayed in the WNBA, but now you're playing grown women. So I think some of the fouls and some of the things that you're seeing are within the scope of the game, and makes sense. Because to stop Caitlin Clark, you really do have to play her physical. She's too good if you just let her dribble around the court and pass to open people and take threes all day long. And you're not going to catch her with her foot speed. Her ball handling skills are too good. She has the ability to be shifty, to step back, to create space. So the best way to defend Caitlin Clark is physically, okay? Now, I do think that physicality should be within the scope of the game. So I'm not a big fan of like cheap shots. They're not for me. But there is a way that people throw people off their game mentally. Little cheap shot, little extra on the screen. Like, that is in the sport of the game. What I don't like is that none of her teammates come to defend her. Now, in their defense, this is new for them too. Like, Aaliyah Boston is only a second-year player. She's never played with Caitlin Clark. She's probably never had anyone intentionally come and body check your player to the ground to figure out what that means in terms of a reaction, okay? So everyone is learning what this new wave of WNBA looks like. And I think we have to all understand that.
There's also a conversation that's going on within the community and outside of the community. Now, it's also part of the interruption, too, that there's always, not always, there's an issue of race here. You have a WNBA, which is mostly black women, and there's a star white player. Is that an issue?
I think if you think it's an issue, then it probably is. But at the same time, I don't think it's fair to make that issue Caitlin Clark, because I think Caitlin Clark has done what she needs to do to be warranted the star of this draft class. I think she plays in a way that's unconventional, a way that you don't typically see in the WNBA. I think she's put up really big numbers. I think she's created a fan base of her own that she brought with her. I don't think that's necessarily someone else creating it for her. I think that's her creating that herself. I think she carried that into the WNBA. I think Caitlin Clark deserves the attention that Caitlin Clark has generated. That does not mean that the rest of her draft class doesn't also deserve some attention, but I think she's the one that did it this time. And for her, and in this case, I think she deserves the attention that she's getting.
Because at the end of the day, there's more eyes watching this league than ever. And whether it's because of A, B, or C player, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah. The step further it has to go is the idea that, okay, Caitlin's here. There are eyes. Let's tell somebody else's story. Let's talk about Alyssa Thomas. Let's talk about Asia Wilson. Let's talk about all the great players we have.
TV stations are responsible for this.
Let's talk about all the great players we have, all the great stories. All of them. Let's talk about the top 10 players in the league. And because the league is predominantly black, when you start talking about all of the top players in the league, it will sort itself out. But we need to talk about all of them. They all have stories. They've all been here. Some of them deserve more respect than they've gotten in the past. I think Caitlin Clark does deserve her media attention. I think she's done what she's supposed to do. But, you know, I do think that there are other people out there that deserve some attention as well.
Thanks for your honesty on that. You know, and I'll need continued honesty here. We talk about criticism, and this happens in the media too, whether it's television, whether it's radio, whether it's fans in seats. Athletes will be cheered, they will be booed, they will be jeered, they will be celebrated. Your brother, during this crazy run for the Edmonton Oilers to the Stanley Cup, has received what I would deem some unfair criticism. You can, I don't know what you think about that, but from a sister perspective, what is that like, knowing that your brother's working real hard on a real good team,
always,
and that he's kind of having to absorb this pressure?
As a sister, as an older sister, you want to protect. A kid who needs no protection, though, let me add. Like, Darnell has never needed protection from any of us, ever. I think for me, the challenging part is I know how hard he works. Darnell is the hardest worker I have ever met in my entire life. And I have been around a lot of people. The way he studies his craft, the way he takes care of his body, the way he trains in an off season, the way he mentally trains, the amount of effort he puts into every aspect of himself so that he can produce at the highest level day in and day out, I bet you is paralleled by very few people. So there again, there is no one that will be harder on him than himself. So any media critics or anything, you're going to say what you're going to say, and he's going to always want more of himself no matter what. He will never be satisfied. He could win a Stanley Cup next week, and he will turn around next week and figure out how he wins another one. That is just how he is wired. So from a sister perspective, you just want to be like, do you know him? Do you know him? He wants to perform at the highest level. Always.
And some of the criticism is coming from the local media that know him the most. And that's surprising for me.
I think you want to produce for the Oilers fans because they deserve it. They're very good fans. They're very loyal.
You were out there.
Yeah, they're very loyal. They're supportive. They ride for their team. They've deserved the Stanley Cup for a long time. So you got to understand that with that type of market comes pressure, and you have to produce. So it's okay, you know what I mean? But yeah, you want to perform for those players and that market and that media.
When you're watching your sister play basketball, you know the sport so well, so you're probably, I won't put words in your mouth, but you're probably watching it from a level of ease. Yeah. Hockey's not your sport. No. So when you're watching Darnell play, what's that like? Maybe you're sitting around with your mom, your dad, your kid. What's that like?
Sometimes I'm like, okay, did he get the angle? Was that right? Most of the times I'm just hit somebody, or get it out. Often I'm just screaming, get the puck out, just get it out. Could you just get it out? Could you play in the offensive end? Because I don't really like when it's in the defensive end. No, I'm not as savvy into hockey skill sets, schemes, or any of those things. But I've watched a lot more hockey in the last 2 years than I can say I ever have. It's really exciting, and it's really exciting in person. It's one of those sports where you're there and you're like, oh. But it's fun. It's fun to learn a new sport. It's fun to start understanding different things. You're like a student again, and you're trying to figure it out. And usually I think he's the greatest player on the ice every day, so it doesn't matter.
Well, that's fantastic. And good luck to him, because I think this is fantastic. And as you said, this could all be over in a week. Yeah. And he could be finally a Stanley Cup champion and bring that cup to Hamilton, which wouldn't that be special? Oh, it'd be amazing.
I know.
It'd be amazing. It would be so amazing. And, you get to see your sister in the Olympics real soon. It's just so much going on for your family. So congratulations and continued success. First of all, NBA championship. Yeah. You got a winner for me?
I'm going with Luka. I'm going with Luka.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going with Luka.
Luka and Kyrie.
Yeah, I am. I don't know. I watched Luka Doncic play in Europe way back when he was young, and I was just like, this kid's going to be so good. Then he came over here and I'm like, big stocky guy just running through people, and I'm like, that's it. And I like his swag.
Yes.
I like his swag.
Throw this out to me. Are there times you look at him and he looks like he's out of shape?
Oh, probably. But he's not though. Luka body somebody in the post, give 10 assists, score 50, and then I don't know, say hi to Kyrie down the street. You know what I mean? They're much better together. I really am really impressed with the way that they've gelled and how well Kyrie has played. Kyrie has played all world also. And I think he also deserves a little bit of redemption here. He's such a talented player. He got left off that USA list, and so he's kind of frustrated about that. But I just think the team they've built is really good, and I like how they play, and I don't know, I feel like something different. The Mavs deserve it.
No, it would be interesting to see them, and I know you got the two Jalen's over there in Boston as well too. I think it's going to be a wonderful series. Yeah. I think they're kind of two different opposing styles of basketball. I love the way the Mavs got better in terms of their defense at the trade deadline. PJ Washington, unbelievable, and I thought it was real neat the way that team, Dallas, knocked out the young guns. Oh yeah. Like in OKC and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but they got pushed to 6. I thought they played a little bit better, but Minnesota too. They just kind of waxed Minnesota.
Yeah, I felt a little bad for Minnesota. I'm not gonna lie. I did really like them in that presser where they were like, "How long are we gonna lose for?" I couldn't. I was just like, "He's right. 20 years." No. One more, I guess. We'll try again next year.
For sure, and you're right about Kyrie too. I feel like maybe there's an internal clock in him that's saying, "I'm not getting any younger right now, and I want to win one more," or whatever the case is. So yeah, I find myself cheering for him as well too. I'm cheering for you.
Thanks.
And I love the fact that you've come back and discussed and been so open about so many topics about your family. Please say hi to your mom and dad. Quality people.
Thanks.
And you know what, whatever happens in your career, whatever decisions you choose, with so many things happening in your life, and you're still young enough to do a lot of things.
Thanks.
I think it's been amazing. Please let us know. Keep us up to date with what's going on.
Okay.
I hope you come back.
I will. Anytime.
Thanks so much.
Anytime. No
Tamika.
problem.
That's great. Hey, folks, that's your podcast for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports, especially with local stars like Tamika. Hey, if you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline Podcast, do want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you do have something to say it. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you tomorrow.